Saw X was directed by Kevin Grittert and is the 10th installment in the Saw franchise. And once again, stars Tobin Bell as John Kramer, also known as the Jigsaw Killer, who is known for his torture traps that he puts his victims in, so they're forced to either harm themselves to get out or die. Set between Saws 1 and 2, John is still dealing with brain cancer and trying to find a treatment for it, finding some hope with a special doctor who says she can, take out the tumor in his head and save his life, just like a bunch of other supposed patients. But after he goes to Mexico to get the treatment, and after dealing with it, getting the surgery and all of that, he realizes that the surgery was fake and he never had anything taken out of his head. So, in an act of revenge, John, with the help of his apprentice Amanda Yun, played again by Shawnee Smith, capture everyone involved: the doctor, the surgeon, the woman who convinced John to take the treatment, and a couple of others, and sets them up in his set of torture traps and begins his game, as he likes to call it. Being the 10th installment in a franchise, Saw X has quite big shoes to fill, but I think that Saw X's feet are big enough to fit. This was probably, in my opinion, the best film in the series next to the first movie, and maybe also Saw 2. It does a good job of capturing the feeling of the first three Saw movies and their style. Their kind of grungy, early 2000s style. But it also does a good job mixing that up with, more modern filmmaking techniques and styles. It keeps with the classic style, but gives you more beautiful shots and more longer takes and all of that sort of stuff. It's also the first Saw movie to be set in another country, as it's set in Mexico, which was very interesting to see, but it also adds to the reason why this game isn't really brought up in any of the other movies, outside of, this being a new prequel film, so it's not going to be mentioned by the originals, really. But obviously John is a serial killer, basically, so it's easy to say that he's, played his games multiple times outside of the main movies. Starting with, what I liked, the typical stuff like the performances, like I always talk about. Performances are really good. Tobin Bell is, as always, pretty good as John Kramer. You kind of sympathize with him a little bit. That's what's always interesting about his character and these movies. You almost sympathize with him because he's still, in a way, a murderer. And he's putting people in these traps which are, torturing them, and that's not really ethical for the most part. But you definitely, get where he's coming from and understand everything that's led up to these points in his life will, make someone kind of messed up like that and do the things he does. All the other actors are great. Shawnee Smith as Amanda Yun, Cecilia, played by Sinove Makodi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that first name right, but she's the ringleader of the scam group. You got Stephen Brand as Parker Sears, who is also one of them. Renata Vaca, I think, or Vasa, possibly, as Gabriella. Joshua Akamoto as Diego. Octavio Hinojosa as Mateo. And Paulette Hernandez as Valentina. And then, of course, many others. Yeah, the performances are good. Obviously, whenever characters are getting tortured, the performance for that is pretty good. Not so much of the cheesiness that some of the Saw performances might have had early on, or at least with some of the later films, like Saw 5, 6, and 7. Definitely cheesy with those movies. But this is not really cheesy. It has its little bits of humor and dark humor, but it's mostly a serious movie, and even a slightly emotional one. If, you're sympathizing with John, which you'll mostly do, at least with the cancer stuff, and if you know the context of his entire life by watching the other Saw movies. But yeah, everyone else is good. I'd say the visuals are pretty good as well. I don't always talk about visuals unless it's something very striking, like Across the Spider-Verse. But, the colors are good. The cinematography is nice. It kind of copies the occasional color palettes of the original Saw movies. Having some green throughout a certain scene, or even orange and yellow, like in some of the Mexico stuff outside of the warehouse. Sometimes it's yellow, because I guess that's just what Mexico is like according to movies and TV. The story is good. Like I said, this is the best one since the first and second one to me, because it trailed off a little bit after that. But here the story is much more in focus. Feels like it's more than just the traps. A little more so in this case, especially because the traps, while still segmented, there's like a different feeling to them than in the other movies. Mostly because this is a more personal game for John, and we're focusing on the scammers as a group in the same building together as the game begins. And on top of that, I like some of these different moments with John, Amanda, some of the other characters, and also the little boy who shows up at one point and near the end. I won't say much other than that, just not to spoil it, but that stuff with him and John are pretty good too. I was honestly surprised by how good that whole aspect of the movie was. It felt like they were putting actual effort and care into the story, and not just wanting to get to the traps because they know that's what the people like. Speaking of traps, let's talk about the thing that everyone loves to hear about the Saw movies, and that's the traps, that's the gore. And this movie does not disappoint. It's a disgusting movie, I'll tell you that. I'm not the biggest fan of torture movies. This series is usually the one where I'm fine with it for the most part. It's better than Hostel or other torture movies that really go into painful detail and go excruciating with the timing. But yeah, this is the right amount of mainstream gore, like enough to disgust you, but not like overdo it and possibly even make you vomit. But that's just me. Some of you guys might have a stronger reaction to some of these kills or some of the violence. It's not just kills, obviously, because John's overall goal is to give people the opportunity to live, but still pretty violent and messed up. Of course, the trap that I knew was going to get me on a personal level was the eye trap, just because small stuff like that, especially eyes, is not my big thing. Because initially I didn't even want to see this in the theater, because there's just something about a horror movie, especially one like this, in the theater that would be a stronger experience, and not in the best of ways. But my brother wanted to see this movie because he's a big Saw fan, so I had to do it for him, especially because it was for his birthday. So I got to do that. But this was a good experience, regardless of the gore. This was a decent time in the theater. Then briefly for music, there wasn't like a prominent soundtrack that I could think of other than the use of the main theme song for this franchise, Hello Zep, which plays at the end like it usually does at the end of most of the Saw movies. Obviously that's a fun thing to see on the big screen, I'll admit. Overall, this was a really good movie, strong on the story, characterization of John Kramer and Amanda Young, full of gore that you will definitely be happy about if you're all for the gore. But if you're not, probably don't go see this movie. If you're better about seeing it on a smaller screen, then yeah, wait for this to be on streaming or someplace like that. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say. So yeah, I highly recommend this movie, so go see it if you have the chance. You won't regret it. I'm gonna give Saw X an 8 out of 10. Well, I hope you enjoyed this review for Saw X. Let me know what you thought of this film if you've seen it. Let me know if you liked it, if you didn't like it. Hopefully you liked this video. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time, and take care.